things that we thought were important in this moment, and we hope to continue this at a future date. So quick personal introduction before I try and upload our PowerPoint. So as I said, my name is Marina, and I am Director of Circle of Life Rediscovery, and my particular passion is how we get children outdoors from all backgrounds into all spaces, whether that's urban or more wild spaces. And I have been working with groups of children and vulnerable groups in particular for over 30 years. And I'm going to pass over to my colleague and friend Kate, so I'm hoping you'll be able to hear her and for an introduction.
Hi, yes, good morning and happy May Day, everybody, and Beltane to all Celtic faith people. So I am Kate, and I've been a play therapist for over 12 years. I've also been a trainer of play therapists for 10 years. And previous to that, I was an expressive arts teacher. So for me, the creativity has been at the core of my childhood and throughout my life. And along with that has been creativity in the outdoors. So playing outdoors, being outdoors, using the gifts of nature to make things and change things outdoors. You know, it's just been intrinsic to how I led my life and brought up my own children. So working with Marina and becoming a director of Circle of Life Rediscovery has kind of brought everything together. Play therapy, therapeutic play, out and in actually utilizing outdoor spaces, whether they're urban or, as Marina has said, out in beautiful woods and so on. So I hope today will inspire those of us who've been in lockdown to, if not get out into an outdoor space, at least try and bring some of the outdoors in.
Thank you, Kate. So once again, please mute if you haven't muted already, and I'm going to try and upload our slideshow for you today. So here we go. Hopefully you're now...
Hey,
yes,
well done, you've done it.
So slideshow from the beginning. Here we go, folks. So yeah, we're introducing you to nature play. As I said, this is a short introduction, and what we're going to do is we're going to have a first half where we look at a little bit of, we'll have a little bit of the science, and
Hi.
we're going to have a little bit of the science and about our approach to this subject. And then the second half, we want to give you what we hope is just a little bit of some skills, a couple of skills, but obviously it's going to be easier to do this in person, but we thought we'd have a bit of fun with it. So me and Kate like to do a little bit of role play, so we're going to play with that later on. So some of the outcomes, what we're really hoping for is to talk a little bit about why the non-directive or directive approach is important, in particular the non-directive approach. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and we're also going to give you an insight in what we would call reflective communication, and also just generally how our lives are actually informed by nature. So that's our outcomes, that's where we're heading. So to begin with, I'd like to start with this whole notion of the holistic child, in fact, the holistic person. So before we look at this a little bit, just to remember that who we are is actually informed by a much larger biological and ecological system. But right now, make sure you put your mics off, please, folks. Right now, what I want to name is that here we are as a human, and we have all these different aspects to ourselves that when we're working with children, we're trying to develop and support all these aspects. So for example, relationships, we want to develop our ability to relate to ourselves, to like ourselves, to relate to other people, and of course to the natural world. We want to develop our physical capacities. When we're little, we might just be learning how to move our fingers in a particular way or move our bodies in a particular way. Of course, we want to start to support our emotional well-being and learn that when we're feeling things in strong ways, maybe we don't hit people, maybe we find other ways to what people call regulate themselves. So there's a lot when we talk about, in this approach, we're talking about the whole child and how nature can support this development and learning and well-being. This is a whistle-stop tour, folks. So being in England in the context, just a very, as a teacher, even our curriculum talks about these aspects. So it talks about the importance of developing mind, body, emotion, and spirit. But of course, most of us know that actually in our system, we're far more thinking orientated, far less connected to our body, less connected to our emotions, and certainly this notion of spirit. And actually, what I'm going to mention is a lot of people get, what would be the word? Nervous about the word spirit or spiritual. And the way we're using this is not in a religious context. We're using this in a context of developing our higher self, if you like, or developing this expansiveness to be able to think wider, to think perhaps about death, to think about meaning in life, and so on. And what we're really saying here is that whilst we're working in nature and we're connecting to nature, we're as a practice, we're thinking about how do we develop all these aspects of ourselves. So again, a little summary here is to think about how we develop mental intelligence, this whole connected way of thinking. How do we develop that? What about our emotional intelligence? Me and Kate's work is a lot about psychological safety and the importance of feeling safe and how a group does that and how nature does that. And this is spiritual intelligence that we're naming about, as I said, solving problems of meaning and value. And of course, this body intelligence, physical intelligence. And it's amazing, isn't it, how we're learning so much about our bodies and how our hormones and our nervous system influence us and affect the way we feel and think. So I'm going to pass over to Kate at this point.
Okay, so yeah, the multiple intelligence approach, I think it can resonate for all of us. We all understand that, we are not just a creature that needs to use its intellectual skills, that there's a whole load of other stuff going on for us. And, those of you with little ones at home will know that the sensory, the way your little one is exploring the world is through their senses. And neuroscience, of which I have researched quite a lot over the years, and it's changing all the time. That's the thing with neuroscience. You've got to keep the eye on the ball because every time the scientists come up with some other notion. However, one of the things that seems to be an absolute is that the way our brain grows is through the sensory inputs we are receiving. Next. Thank you. So here's a little cartoony type picture of, basic word art skills. We are what we can feel through our fingers and our skin. That's a huge sensory receptor. Our sight and our vision depend a lot on that these days, especially, the older we get, the more we think what we see is what is all there is, but actually we are taking in so much through our ears all the time, so much through our nose, and actually, we are tasting. So these sensory inputs are how we are making sense of right now, right here, where you're sitting, maybe feeling trapped and like, I've been inside this room too long, I need to get out feeling. And we are needing sensory experiences that will enrich us. And when we get bored, it's because our senses are bored. Okay, thank you. Next slide. So I was introduced to this guy some years ago when he published his book, Thinking Fast and Slow. It's really an interesting, he's actually an economist. However, his idea of this fact that we have this huge system one brain, that is the emotional, unconscious, automatic, very fast thinking brain that deals with all these sensory inputs. And the messages have to get sent to our system two, our lovely, rational, logical brain that tries to then order things and put them into some sort of filing cabinet, I think of it as. Okay, I'm not a neuroscientist. However, I'm incredibly interested in, not incredibly, I am just interested in what's going on in here for me and how this affects all of this. Okay, thanks, Marina. So why outdoors? Why nature play? Why? Well, I think maybe I may be preaching, or we are preaching to the converted possibly, and that all of you are really keen outdoor people who are, you know, running forest schools or and so on. However, if, you know, an important thing to pass on is that actually, if you allow your child outdoors to play, they are going to get more stimulation to their senses than when you are in a room. Again, when we're in rooms, they're very nice, they're very safe, we can play with our gadgets, and that's cool. But the amount of sensory inputting we're actually getting, the feed, you know, the food for our senses is limited. You know, you just cannot get, you know, the smell of these chives. Yes, you can smell the chives from the fridge, but it's not the same. So, next slide. You know, I don't really need to talk to all these slides. I think it goes without saying that children have fun when they're outside. And if we are feeling we're having fun, that's because we're releasing endorphins and oxytocins, you know, and opioids, the feel-good hormones. And it makes us feel better. And if our brains are being flooded with feel-good hormones, actually, that's a positive anti-stress mechanism. Okay. And also, of course, you know, if you're lucky enough to be able to go out and play, you know for yourself that there's a feeling of freedom once you're outside. And children really know it. And they can allow their imaginations to wander. They can have dreams. They can be on another planet. They can create, you know, these amazing structures as you can see in these pictures, or, you know, they can play hunter-gatherers, whatever. Okay, thanks. And mess, you know, mess. If we're living in confined urban settings, yes, mess is annoying when it's inside. You know, cleaning up after toddlers it's a never-ending process sometimes. If you're outside, actually, it's easier to get messy. And we can always, even those incredibly muddy children, can get clean again. And that's a kind of psychological, symbolic experience. Even though I get dirty, messy, I can actually clean up again. It's a, you know, slight feeling of resilience building. Okay. And there's good old Maslow's hierarchy of need. You know, we know that actually if our physiological needs are wanting, it's very hard to establish all those other things. And if we go back to Kahneman's system 1 and system 2, system 1 is dealing with the lower end of this pyramid. System 2 is probably mostly to do with self-actualization and beginning to feel in control of yourself. So, you know, we need to address this. And when we play outside and create dens, which, you know, children love to do, and you can create a den inside under the kitchen table or whatever, dens will connect us back to the very first of our species, human beings, and the fact that we all needed shelter. Wherever we were in the world, shelter became the primary reason why we have been able to expand and take over the world in the way we have, and which maybe is no longer viable. Okay.
Oops.
So and awareness within nature play. And of course, all of this we go into in much more depth in the 2-day course, but an awareness is that we're not all able to get out into beautiful places, you know, and at the moment in cities, I believe all the parks are even shut. So even a walk through the park might be impossible. I'm not sure, you can correct me if I'm wrong there about all parks. However, we can usually get out at some point, hopefully in the future, and collect objects and bring them back into the house or the playroom or, you know, whatever the setting is. The need to limit how much, well, not limit, but also to provide the alternatives to plastic toys. Because if you just look at the picture of the shells and the wood, you know, things maybe picked up off the beach, driftwood and so on. The amount of textures, you know, in the grasses, in the seeds, you know, water, playing with water. We know toddlers love it, but actually we all love it. Why are water fights such amazing fun? Okay, so basically to include elements of the natural world, which are earth, fire, well, the sun, if we can't make a real fire, earth, fire, wind, air, and what's the one I've forgotten? Water. Thank you. Okay, so, you know, try and encourage those things as well in your play, because that is keeping us connected to actually what the systems of our natural world rely on.
Thank you, Kate. So what you've got in front of you now is what we sometimes call play continuum, or nature play continuum, or forest play continuum. And what we want to highlight to you is really what I said at the beginning, which is the importance really of non-directed play. Now, in our world, we will do all sorts of play, including virtual play, as you see on the continuum. And we're not going into this in much depth today, but we want to really highlight that actually this idea of non-directed play, of allowing children to lead their own play, and the importance of that. And in a later slide, I'll talk a little bit more about that. So this approach we're advocating is really at this end of the spectrum, at the non-directed end of the spectrum. And then as an adult, we have a particular role within that about how we may speak to children or observe children, or what we may provide or not provide, what, you know, to really consider as an adult, whether that's a parent or a practitioner, what is our role. And that may be different than what you're used to, because certainly most of us are brought up to be told what to do and to be trying to achieve certain aims by doing something. And actually me and Kate often explore and talk about this idea of being, the being rather than the doing, and how when you allow this time and space for children to discover, and in a way that is directed by them and non-directed by the adult, then we start to move towards some of the outcomes that we all want. We want self-esteem, etc. We want worth, to feel worth, that we belong to a society, that all these things. So yeah, this is the framing of that. Now, we have something exciting for you all, wondering if this is going to work. So I'm going to go to the drawing exercise. So some of you may have remembered or seen at the beginning, if this is all working, to have a piece of paper with you and a pen. So I'm going to ask you to do something, and then Kate's going to ask you to do something. And what we just want you to do, and it's a very quick thing that could be expanded into much more time, but time is not what we've got on this call. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, I want you to do anything you like with that piece of paper and pen, and you actually only have 20 seconds. Off you go, folks.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Stop!
Okay, we'll come back to that in a minute. But just take a second just to think, how did that feel? What was that like? We didn't give you a lot of time, but you know, what was that like? Just a little thing what I did.
A little doodling. Okay, and now I'm going to ask you to draw a square, which is approximately 3 centimeters in diameter.
A square?
A square. Above that square, could you balance a circle? And above that circle, could you place a triangle? And you should find that you should have something that looks like that. Okay.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay. So, what have we done just that? What did we do just then? Well, in a very loose way, what I did was I created an opportunity for you to do whatever you wanted. And you could say that was a non-directed. It's not in the sense that I am actually asking you to do something, but we wanted to give you a sense of the freedom that comes with choice. Okay. On the other hand, Kate did a very adult-led, a very directive exercise that would ask you to do very specific things, some things that you may normally see in perhaps more mainstream, certainly primary, secondary level, more common. So I don't know if you can see the slide very well, it's not as clear, but we're just building on that idea of the play continuum. In forest school, we might call it the forest play continuum. And just to give you some of those different, what would you say, like different outcomes, I guess, of the different approaches.
This isn't a judgment on one being better than the other. The fact is we need both. This is a system 1, system 2 issue.
Yeah, so what is important, exactly as Kate just said, is we're not saying one is better than the other. They have different results, if you like. But if you take a moment and just look at the child-led side of it, when we are allowing children to self-discover and explore and give them the time and space to do that, what we learn and what we observe and what the research supports is that they become intrinsically motivated. It comes from within them. They're not seeking the approval or a big outside tick for their exploration or what they actually do, if you like. And then we look at how that builds this self-esteem and autonomy, all these different outcomes that come from this sort of approach. And on the other side, we might have also positive outcomes for a directed approach. It's quite, when we want to master something, we may need to seek outside input. We may want that. We want to be directed in a particular way. But actually, we're actually, like it says there, like craftsmanship and so on. But on the other hand, we may then experience being wrong when we do something wrong, for example. So this,
if at this point if we hold up our first Marina picture, have a quick blast of just how creative and different everybody's would be. If we hold up the second one, presumably, yes, look at that. You've done well. You can have a star, Amy Moore. It's about, expectations, isn't it? And actually, sometimes it's nice to feel that we've met the expectation of someone else.
okay, so moving on, food for thought, we hope. Moving on.
Okay, so here we have something. Write down as quickly, you only have 10 seconds, say. How many things could this be, this object on the photograph? How many ideas do you actually have of what this might be? Okay, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Countdowns are important with children. Okay, so I don't know how many you have. I mean, to me, it's the most amazing magic world in there. Actually, this is scientifically known as Chalcedony on chrysocolla stalactites. So there we are. That's the scientific name. And there again is the, you know, this incredible human capacity we have to have this imagination, and then this very scientific analysis, logical filing of a name. So these are the two, you know, this is the human capacity we have that nature play encourages.
Okay, so don't attempt to read all of this at this point, perhaps, but what we want to do is just to, as we come to the end of this very short introduction, we wanted to do a little role play between me and Kate, maybe 2 role plays, using reflective communication. Now, what we're encouraging here is we're saying that if we actually use this approach, we're likely to reduce confrontational situations, and we're likely to promote healthy relationships, and actually for people to feel listened to and to relax, actually, to not be in a heightened sense of stress. So again, this is a whole area to discover and explore and practice, but we thought we'd have a little fun with this as well. So we're going to have a little two different exercises. So what's going to happen is Kate, and we're hoping you can see, because I realise our screens are quite small, and I am hoping you can see Kate. She's going to well, what are you going to do, Kate? Why don't you just let's do it? Let's jump.
I'm going to be a child.
Okay.
One of my favorite things, obviously. And I found this object. Marina, what is it? What is it, Marina? Tell me what it is.
What is it? I wonder what it is.
No, tell me what it is.
You really want me to know what it is?
Yeah, what is it? What's this for?
Let's have a look.
I think it might be a camera.
Oh, a camera.
Might be a camera, but there's nowhere for me to look through.
Take a picture.
Usually you can see something on a camera, and then what's this? Seems.
Ooh.
Oh, look, Marina.
Look.
It's a torch.
Torch. Lovely. Thank you very much. So we'll unpack that a little bit, but just that little interaction. And now we're going to reverse it. So on the course, the Nature Play and Therapeutic Space course, which is mainly really looking at actually what happens when we're working with young people that are struggling. And that is most of our work, actually, is working with more vulnerable groups. So I'm going to role play, which is often what I like to do. I'm going to role play perhaps a child that's a little bit angry. And we're just going to have a little moment there of another experience of some reflective communication. So I don't want to go out. I'm not going to go out. You can't make me go out.
You don't want me to make you go out.
I'm not going to go out. Why are you looking at me like that? Go away.
What am I looking? Want me to go away?
Told you I don't want you to go. I want you to go away. I don't want you to be near me.
You don't want me near you. You just don't want me near you, and you don't want to go with the others, do you?
No.
Well, perhaps we could just sit here for a bit. You don't want to go with the others.
No. I'll sit here.
Sit here.
Okay, thanks, Kate. Shake it off, shake it out, get rid of that. Okay, so we are, so how to unpack that a little bit. So you might already have noticed some of the things, tools, if you like, that we were using. We use that quite a lot, don't we? The
Yeah, I'm very big on it gives you time to stop yourself going into stop being you irritating little child sort of feeling, which might come up after all. Yeah, it just gives you time to calm and approach the situation in a sort of very gentle, but you are still in control way.
Yeah. If we were physically in front of each other, we'd probably be seeing us doing some mirroring of the body together as well. And also giving me enough space, because, you know, when I'm feeling angry, I don't want someone here. Don't want that. I want them, at least I don't want that. Other people might want that. I want to have that.
And it's really the acknowledgement of the child's right to have the feelings that they're having. It's not saying, oh, come on, you know you'll have fun if you go and join the others. You know, that's you, coming from you. No, this child at that point really felt they just didn't want to go. So you have to meet that, even if you know that actually this is going to be very awkward and somehow I'm going to have to get this child to join the others. It's worth taking the patient approach, as in patience.
Thank you.
Okay. I know not always, in reality, not always possible, but I've found it to be a very good tool, reflective language, with all children.
So we have done an incredibly fast whistle-stop tour of some little bits to do with nature play, and you may have thought, well, hang on, is this to do with nature play? And of course, what we're saying is that all this work working with young people can happen in nature, and that when we do that, we're supported by the natural world in so many ways. Okay. Now we're going to end the part of the webinar there, and what we'd like to do is just create a couple of opportunities for some questions. Now, to do that effectively, I'm going to have to stop this slideshow and go back to see the chat. So I'm going to try and do that now, and that will hopefully bring us all back into one screen. And then I will look on the chat, see if there's any questions, but maybe somebody would feel brave enough just to unmute themselves and ask a question. And we've got about 5 minutes or so, to 5-10 minutes, depending on how it goes, to do that. And thank you for your patience. Really appreciate you joining us today. And I will stop this share now. Hopefully it will all work. Okay. Great. So I've got people talking. Some people aren't hearing, so I don't know what that means. I'm really hoping that we've recorded it if you haven't been able to hear. Is there any questions out there? Any questions that you'd like to throw at us in this last moment?
Hi, Marina.
Hi.
It's Magella here. I met you down in Wicklow at the Forest School training.
Hi, Magella.
Hi. Thank you very much. That was a really enjoyable session. From my own experience, when you've got a group of children going out, motivation is generally not an issue. But sometimes what I find is maybe with practitioners themselves, trying to inspire adults to bring children outside or to provide for outdoor experience, I would find that a major, when working with adult groups, sometimes people just really don't want to go outside. So I'm just wondering if you have any advice around that situation.
Yeah. you know, I think, well, all I can say initially is most of the work is when you're working with children, is the issues are always the adults.
Yeah.
So you're not alone in that. It's always the adults. And I think the things that have worked for me is multiple ways of doing that. I mean, if I was working in a school, I would try and do some parent-based, adult-based assembly, and of course, what that's like screen-based, if you like. But then otherwise, I would want to give people the opportunity to actually experience it, because this is one of the problems. If you don't actually have a direct experience of what it feels like to start playing, or if you don't know how to play, then you really don't know how to value it. So it's, in a way, it is a catch 22, but if we can create spaces or opportunities for adults to have that experience, then they can start to value it. I mean, that's the long-term plan in a way. Kate, would you add anything?
Yeah, I could add that actually it is daunting if you're not somebody who's used to being outdoors and going outdoors. So that's why I suggest always bring outdoors in. So if you've got a group of parents, you know, I work a lot in Northern Ireland with parent groups, and you know, if you take in natural objects, you can play sorting games, you can play, you know, making patterns with these stones and sticks, you can play all sorts of things first inside. It's sort of re-engaging people with natural materials, because yeah, our modern world has, or had, should I say, actually dislocated us so dramatically from natural materials, you know, that actually we need to bring them back into the home first, possibly, or back into the classroom first. Yeah, that might help.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Magella. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Catherine. I have a question for you, Angela Little here. I work a lot with children with additional needs, so autism and things like that. So where you did the role play, can that be adjusted for children with additional needs, and how would I do that?
It's hard to give you a short enough answer for here, but yes, of course, reflective language is useful for everybody, you know, because what you're doing is acknowledging the person and the person's right to their feelings. And I think a lot of issues, particularly for children on the spectrum, ASD spectrum, is that, you know, they have a unique way of seeing the world. They have a unique experience of their sensory inputs, you know, and we need to acknowledge that, actually, and not see it as a problem, but actually be curious.
Okay, but some of the children I work with,
that unique vision.
But some of the children I work with would be non-verbal and couldn't, you know.
Well, that's where, can I remember just how little of our communication is verbal? You know, actually, is it about, I don't know, 70%, I think is the figure. You know, we actually is a verbal, maybe even less.
Yeah. So could I say something to that? So we have run for about 7 years in combination with the Family Intervention Service, Learning Disabilities. We run nature play, and most of the young people are non-verbal. And exactly what Kate's saying is, what we're doing is we're mirroring what we receive. So with the sounds, with the movements, and doing that in a non-verbal way. And actually, with support, we're also introducing them to things like fire, which for some would think, what? How are you doing that? But you're working alongside the person, whoever they are. And so I feel really strongly, and actually, as you said, Kate, what is communication? And I think 27% is the words. That's what I remember. I mean, it could be 8% or 5%, but it's 7% is words. The rest is tone of voice. What is it now? I've forgotten it now. But you know, it's non-verbal. So
non-verbal language.
Yeah, it's non-verbal. So we are animals, aren't we? We are actually we're from the animal kingdom. So feel encouraged, and I can certainly, if you look on our website, the Woodland Project, it's quite inspiring, and it's
Very good.
it's working absolutely in that way. So I hope that's a little bit.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you both.
Thank you, Angela.
So I think we've got time for one more, or a little one, if there is anything. Someone's actually asking, can I ask her? Go on, go for it.
Who? Robert?
Yes, hello.
Hi, Rob.
Yes, I operate in Spain with Spanish children. And a lot of this non-verbal things I've been hearing, I do a lot with the kids already. Have you got any advice on dealing with children, basically English is their second language? Or I mean, because you can have so much interaction in the language itself. I mean, I'm dealing with kids that basically barely speak English. So
yeah. Well, I mean, my advice is probably, I wondered whether, Kate, you're going, I mean, when you play, you don't need to use language for, you know, for a start, but also what's coming to me is music and singing and, you know, and using sound. I mean, certainly I lived in Mexico a few years ago, and we did this fantastic thing that we were just making up songs with what we had, and before we knew it, we were cooking, but we were using words, and they were telling me words and I was telling them words, and you know, I just think it comes back to that we do communicate way beyond the words, and of course hopefully we will learn some of those words and share. I mean, it's a simple answer, but would you say anything else, Kate, to that, other than play is universal?
Well, maybe I mean, the CPD that we created on nature play in the therapeutic space was specifically because people who work outdoors often have issues with children in their groups who can't take part. And I'm wondering whether, Robert, that's what you're kind of like, actually, some of these children are...
I have to keep it very simple. Verbally, I have to keep it very simple because I'm dealing with toddlers and primary students that basically have a very basic level of English. So I've got to keep it very, very simple in my communication. You know, I reinforce structures and verbal cues basically because I want them to speak English and I want them to hear English. So there is a lot of communication, but at the same time, it's not a two-way street. You know what I mean? Because I'm usually doing most of the talking or doing most of the stimulating.
So what I would ask probably is, if it's okay, as a closing, is just to go back to that continuum, because actually what I'm hearing is you do have an outcome. You know, you're actually you're being quite directive, and there's nothing wrong with that, because presumably they're coming for a reason or whatever, or their parents are telling them to come. But know that what we're talking about is a non-directive